Good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for coming out tonight to Blakademik Live. I really appreciate you coming down tonight for this discussion. We're going to have some fun tonight with my panel and your good selves. For those who don't know who Blakademik are and what we do, I'll just give a very brief synopsis of what we do and who we are. For those that have heard this for the last 17 times, I apologize in advance. Sorry, not sorry. Blakademik Live, we are putting on shows here at the Curtain Club, I'll get to that in a second, where we have discussions around issues that pertain to black culture and the wider culture. Blakademik, we are a team of people that put out content and do shows with the sole, I guess, aim of trying to elevate and celebrate black culture and black people. Our website, blakademik.com, you can see it here. Some of my team have got their tops on as well. We have a website, and what our plan is to try and aggregate and centralize as much as the really dope, progressive and interesting black content that's out there, because it's hard to find. It's out there, but you have to get through reams of nonsense and stuff that I don't personally think serves our culture in any kind of positive light. So we're trying to aggregate all the good stuff. So you want to see some really interesting, progressive, educational, entertaining culture, stuff around the culture, blakademik.com, our content's on there as well as other people's stuff as well. So I want you guys to check out the website tonight or tomorrow, latest, deadline for you guys. I've got everyone's name in the room. So if I don't see you guys following us on our platform tomorrow, I'll be very, very upset. And nobody wants that. My name is Jordan Jarrett Bryan. I founded Blakademik 5 years ago because I wasn't seeing enough representation of the people who are in my circles on mainstream TV. We're very good at kicking balls and rapping and dancing, but I wasn't seeing any of the people that I know who are pilots or doctors or business leaders or politicians being celebrated in the way that I thought was fair and accurate. I work at Channel 4 News, and this kind of came to me about 5 years ago, where we do a thing called a disco. So after a news segment on a news report, we go to the studio, and Jon Snow, who's now moved on, or Krishnan will do a live chat with our guests. Anything to do with Brexit, science, business, invariably the guests will be old white men. Anything to do with sports, hip hop, fried chicken, or serious things like knife crime. Jordan, do you have any guests that we can get on the show? So I thought, that's not cool. So I set up Blakademik with the sole purpose to try and basically elevate and show people in all the skill sets that we are penetrating, including sport entertainment, but so much more. Thank you for coming on tonight. A big up to all the people watching via our live stream tonight. We are feeding a stream via our LinkedIn page as well as our YouTube page as well. So thank you for joining us on there. Any comments, get them in the chat and I'll get to those as soon as possible. And social media, we're across Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, as well as a YouTube channel. Check us out, follow us, we have some dope content on there. Enjoy. So, a couple of things about where you are right now. This is the Curtain Members Club. This is where all your dreams can come true, yeah? This is a workspace, this is a place to meet people, have your functions and your events, but it's also a social environment, whereby you can eat. There's 2 restaurants here, there's 2 bars, you have breakfast here, hang out, have some parties, and other events like this are here throughout the month as well. There is a special offer for people who are not members currently, for Blakademik members who want to join. If you want to do that, hit me up afterwards and I'll direct you to the relevant people that will sign you up. I'm not paid to do that plug. I'm here most of the time and I love it. So I recommend you come and join the family here as well. And just finally, a bit of housekeeping before we start. The toilets are over there to my left, to your right. And can we have phones off, please? There will be a slight change to our event tonight in terms of structure. Normally we have like an hour of chat between me and my panelists, and then we go Q&A to you guys. But I'm like, nah, I want it to be a lot more inclusive. So we will be talking to you guys as well as talking to my panel as well, to just make it a little bit more, you know, we're going to hear your comments and questions as well. We've all been to events where there's that one audience member who asks a question that's 17 minutes long, yeah? Some people are in this audience right now, I'm not going to name any names. That's not happening tonight. So I will ask if you can keep your questions and comments succinct and to the point, please. Thank you very much. Okay, so tonight's discussion is going to be around redefining beauty. And where the Blakademik members sign up to get a seat for tonight, there's a part where you can add a question if you want to ask tonight. And one question from somebody in the audience was, well, how do you define or redefine beauty? Because you can't, there is no definition of beauty. And it's very, very true. What I'm hoping to get from tonight's discussion with my panelists, our intro in a second, is how how beauty for the individual plays out in behavioral. So how does it affect how you work and who you employ? How does it affect how you date and who you date, as well as more societal broad range issues as well? And my guest here, Josh, my left, flagged to me as well that it's very important we don't group people too much, because there's always an individual element to why people do what they do and see things the way they see things indeed. So let me get to my guest and my panelists today. I'm joined by a phenomenal trio of guests, starting to my direct right here. I have a plus size model and content creator, Shahira Allen. Some love please for Shahira. I'm also joined by Meena Ayittey, who's a film director. Got it at the end. Some love for Meena, please. And to my far left, I'm joined by Josh Rivers, who's head of comms at UK Black Pride and host of Being Busy Black podcast. Some love for Josh, please. So I want to also penetrate on areas of beauty where it affects a man, where it affects people in the media industry, where it affects skin tone, and the issue of colorism as well, because that is relevant to me as well, in particular with darker skinned black women. I want to get to that as well. But let me start off, guys, with the question. I'm going to start with two questions I'll ask all three of you. First of all, what is beauty to you? And how has the mainstream idea of beauty impacted you? So how is what we're told traditionally is beautiful? How has that impacted you, and what for you is beauty? I'm going to pick on you first, Josh.
So I guess we're talking about beauty as physical human beauty,
to
right?
Start with,
versus
yeah.
the kind of like the natural beauty that abounds around us. I think that beauty is, or as I'm learning increasingly, that beauty runs an amazing spectrum, and I've been increasingly unable to define it neatly. Mm-hmm. It's the way somebody moves, like the movement of somebody's body, the kind of swag they have. It's the way they dress, the way they compose themselves. It's some people have a certain elegance, some people have a bit of disrepair, you know, like there's this kind of beautiful kaleidoscope of ways that people show up in the world. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm learning that from, you know, my siblings in the queer community increasingly as they express themselves and explore makeup and different genders and pronouns and ways of dressing. I'm finding every instance and version of them beautiful, mm-hmm. you know? And so I don't know. I don't know what beauty is. I know to me that it's whatever catches my eye.
Mm-hmm. And how has the standard of what beauty is impacted your life, if at all?
So I thought it was very interesting that someone said that they couldn't define, that beauty can't be defined. I think it is very well defined, in fact. And I think that living in white supremacist, cis heteropatriarchal societies, we understand that beautiful is supposed to be these kind of twin man, woman, impossibly thin, impossibly masculine ideals that we're all supposed to aspire to, and the further we fall from those two pillars, the less beautiful we are. So I think that's really well established in places like the UK and the US and indeed across Europe. And I think that as a queer black man, you know, mixed black man who has grown up in predominantly white gay scenes, I felt that hugely, both from an objectification point of view, but also this kind of never feeling quite hot or beautiful enough. You know, I'm not the kind of prototypical gay robot, and that's not for striving, right? Like, you know, you try to get by where you can. So this journey for me has been one of kind of coming back into myself in a way that I was talking about this with Shahira earlier. This kind of reclaiming of my body and myself that I've gone on this journey over the past 5 years. So its impacts are ongoing.
Okay, I hear that. I mean, what about you? What's beauty to you? And how has the idea of what we're told beauty is impacted your life?
I would agree with you that, you know, what we consider beauty is, you know, it runs the gamut. There's such a huge spectrum of what we consider beautiful. For me personally, I would say, I don't think I can define beauty, but I would say it's authenticity. It's kind of being yourself. It's not adhering to, you know, the societal norms that are placed on us, or behaving in ways that we're expected to behave. You know, I feel as though it's authenticity and it's being yourself. I know that that's quite a grey area and that's very hard to define, but I think what I'm really happy and excited about today is that we're seeing these broader definitions of kind of what we as a whole see as beautiful, and that's across kind of skin tones, across skin textures, across body types, sexuality. I think the scope is so huge. I don't think there is one thing that is beautiful, but I think it's a sense of authenticity and owning yourself and your place in the world. If I could describe it in a nutshell. Yeah.
No, that. And how has traditional means of what beautiful is impacted your life?
I'd say growing up, echoing what you were saying, growing up in a predominantly white society, having peers, who don't look like you, being presented with this kind of image of beauty that is very different to what you see reflected back at you when you look in the mirror. I think it's been hugely detrimental, not just to me, but to people I know who look like me. Growing up and knowing that you don't fit, this kind of cookie cutter of what is deemed as attractive or acceptable. You can't help but internalize that as a child, and you maybe don't have the words to articulate it and describe how you feel, but you feel it. You feel it in how people interact with you, or how people perceive people who look very different from you. So when I was growing up, Kate Moss was the model who was the model of the moment, who was like the icon, and people fawning over how how amazing her hair is, how amazing her body is, and then kind of looking at yourself as a child and realizing that you're the opposite of that. I think it's been hugely detrimental. But I think what's changing today is, as I was saying before, is that the concept of beauty is far more broader now, and that's thanks mostly, I think, to media and the fact that we're able to see all of us kind of represented in all our different forms and all of our different guises.
I want to get to media for sure, and I want to ask that question actually.
Yeah.
Is media changing?
Sorry, I didn't mean to step on your next question.
The same to yourself.
I absolutely should have gone first because there's no way I can follow those articulate. So remind me of the first point.
What is beauty to you?
Okay, so beauty to me, I feel like I'm going to give a cheesy answer here, is I definitely think it's an internal thing. I don't think it's something visual, personally. I can understand why we see things that are beautiful, but I really think with people, like you can appreciate from your own perspective what beauty is when you look at someone, right? But I really think it's like, for example, we spoke. I can tell you're a beautiful person because I've spoken to you, and I can tell like you have this beautiful spirit about you. Like, to me, that's beauty. I can't just look at someone and be like, I mean, based off of what we see in society, I can look at someone and be like, that person is conventionally hot, like, but I genuinely think it's an internal thing for me.
And to link to the second question, is what you see as conventionally hot something that has been placed upon you, i.e. you think that person's hot because of what you've been told?
What I see as conventionally hot is completely different. Do I have to say conventionally hot? Can we just go back to it? Can we go back to it? I'm sorry I said that. No, so what I see as like conventional beauty now has been redefined by myself. But what I know that this white Western society wants me to see as conventional beauty, I can also see and understand that that's what I'm supposed to think is beautiful. I grew up in West Yorkshire, in case you couldn't tell from the accent. I'm doing up but I grew up surrounded by white people. There were probably like a handful of black kids in my entire school, and like I grew up in an environment where whiteness was centered and where white beauty standards were the standard, where like there was no form of like black beauty around me other than in my home, but when you're a kid and you just want to fit in and stuff, like you absorb from outside as well. So yeah, I feel like really grateful to be on this panel and discussing what redefining beauty is, because you can see me, I'm a plus size black woman, like, and I'm beautiful and I feel beautiful, and I worked very hard to
Love that.
but yeah,
I hear it. So we all work in media, and you more so social media.
Yeah.
First of all, I'll ask you first, Meena. You kind of touched on it earlier on, but is media doing a good enough job to change what it's putting out as what is beautiful? So are we still seeing adverts for DFS with the white family with the blonde haired girl and whatever? You know what I mean?
No.
And even programming, in terms of casting, are we seeing a more?
I think it's changing. It is changing. I think also what we define as media is changing as well. You know, when I was growing up, we didn't have Facebook, we didn't have Instagram. We didn't have this kind of democratization of media where, you know, someone, you know, can be in their bedroom filming themselves doing a makeup tutorial or a hair tutorial. I feel as though that's changed the scope of kind of media. It's not the traditional what's on news at 6 o'clock or what happens to be on this channel at this time. I think generally we've got content creators who are catering for everyone. And so I think that naturally forces the change, you know, because you've got a wider range of people putting out content and, you know, and identifying with a larger group of people. So it is changing. Do I think the media is doing a good enough job? No. I think a lot more needs to change. I feel as though we're literally touching the surface at the moment. I feel as though like there's a lot of talk and there's a lot of chatter, but I think we still need to see more results and seeing us represented in all of our guises, you know, not just, you know, putting a black face in a commercial because they need to tick a box.
So I want to bring that to you now, Josh. Do you see a difference in mainstream media and who's representing and who's putting forward in terms of advertising products, putting in soap operas, putting on dramas? And are you cynical about, if you think they are you cynical about why they are doing that?
I'm hugely cynical. I mean, we're selling products. This diversity and inclusion and representation in this space it only serves one function. It doesn't serve to make you feel good about yourself. Yeah. If advertising wants you to feel beautiful, it's to a capitalist end. So of course I'm cynical about it. I don't know if there's any other way to be about it. You know, my preferred media format, obviously, as you know, is podcasts and radio, which I think links to this point about kind of, you know, I've heard somewhere that the voice carries the soul. And so I have an opportunity to help people kind of, you know, express themselves in this way where what they look like doesn't really matter, right? Who they are matters in Busy Being Black's particular space. It would be disingenuous to say, particularly after the way we've all been raised, all of us in this room, I imagine, that media doesn't still have a really powerful role to play in ensuring that the stories that matter to the majority of us, however idiosyncratic and unique those stories are told in really meaningful and representative ways. I think the role of the media and the role of kind of like consumer capitalist advertising, marketing, branding.com /spy this can be treated as two distinct mediums. Particularly because, to your point, like the arbiters of what's beautiful are changing, right? And I think that's the point that you're making, is that before we had kind of very limited ways of seeing the world, because the world is delivered to us in certain ways by certain people at certain times and different talking points. This is what you need to think and believe and see. But now we can just go on Twitter or on Instagram or on YouTube and we can see so many alternate realities happening at the same time that it's now becoming incongruous, right? Like there is a real dissonance between what we're seeing from mainstream media as expressed with the Ukraine situation and what most of us are encountering in our real life and in what we choose to pursue and consume online. So yeah, does that answer the question?
It does, it totally does.
Bring it back.
Social media is your world.
Yeah.
I see this kind of filter culture going really strong now. Where
I'm pro filters, by the way.
No, I'm not anti-filter, but I see it getting to a point where...
Put that Paris filter on.
I saw one of your videos last week where you had filled with those massive lips and massive eyebrows. It was really, really fun.
And you saw me and you're like, oh my God, it's real.
No, but that was fun. What I'm talking about is the filters that people genuinely apply because they want to make themselves look different to the outwardly world. How dangerous has social media been in the world that you work in defining what
I really think that there are some people who, like, I genuinely think there's a right and wrong way to consume social media. I think that there's the side like that where it's like, it becomes a sickness for some people, where they feel like they have to conform to these celebrities or like this celebrity culture. And like, obviously I don't know, when it comes to like beauty, I'm never going to fit into this westernized standard of beauty. So like I've had to like learn to kind of redefine my own beauty standards, be myself, and then going into social media, I have to kind of not block out the noise, but like consume it in a healthy way so that I don't wake up feeling crap about myself or wake up thinking I need to get a flight to Turkey and suck all the, like this out or get my lips enhanced. Like I'm not against black people in particular having like any kind of like surgery or anything, but I just think like what made us think that we need to go and get our lips bigger, and what made us think that we need to go get our bums done, and like it's so weird watching from my perspective, because I have this very like, I'm on social media and I'm classed as an influencer. I don't call myself an influencer. I call myself a content creator, because I create content to be consumed and people can make of it what they want, and I put this positive message out. I try, but influencers, I've lost my trail of thought.
I was just keen to hear, how bad you think it, because I think social media has done a lot of good. I don't think it's all bad.
Oh, okay,
But I think when I see some people and some friends of mine, what they're doing to distort how they look, it's purely because they want to put a projection of how they look to the world that isn't real for them.
Yeah, but social
it's not real for it.
Go on.
I just think it's a sickness. Like when people are like that obsessed with it that they're willing to adapt their actual like mentality, bodies. I think it's genuinely not healthy. It's so unhealthy. It's like eating McDonald's every day to me. Like you're eating McDonald's every day when you can unfollow McDonald's and follow Subway, who have salad options. Do you know what I mean? Like, still tasty.
What were you going to say then, Meena?
What was I going to say?
Social media.
Social media. Yes, I was going to say that, I think a lot of this spans from dishonesty from so-called celebrities about how they appear as well. You can see a model in a bikini on a beach, looking incredible, but she doesn't say in the post that she's had surgery or she's had a facelift or she does a juice cleanse 6 days a week. All that information is available. So
it's olive oil.
Yeah, exactly. It's the olive oil diet, right? So I feel as though as a consumer, kind of looking at that, you just think, oh wow, why don't I look like that? She's doing everything. All she's doing is eating healthily. Why don't I look like that? So I think there's this dishonesty that's coming from celebrities that kind of helps feed into this obsession.
It's definitely celebrity culture, I feel
like
that's the apex of where the
and a miseducation, right? Like social media is not real. It's never been real, and it's never. No one ever said real media, right? It's social media. There is an element of it, to quote Jean Baudrillard, that it's kind of like 3 steps removed from reality. And I think that what we risk doing is kind of pathologizing how individual people behave on social media, and then saying everybody has a problem with social media, or are responding in really unhealthy ways, which is true, but the solution is perhaps, or the issue is not necessarily social media per se, but that there isn't an honest conversation around what social media is supposed to do in the world, right? And I think that my relationship with social media has changed dramatically over the past 5 years for a number of reasons, but I've always felt a little safer on Instagram. The video messaging aspect of it, the ability to have more in-depth conversations with people via voice notes and DMs, like there's something really sociable and a little safer for me on this particular platform. And I think as I've kind of confronted my own use of fillers and how my own body image has changed in line with how society keeps demanding our bodies change, right? Because social media is not like unique, or people's response to social media is not unique to social media. Before Instagram, before Twitter, before YouTube, there were those trashy magazines, there was the news media, there were newspapers, there was what are the page 3 I've never seen one. There has always been an example to strive to. There's always been an alteration to make. Like that is a constant, right? And so I think that we have to improve our education around social media and stop. Everybody should stop pretending that it's real. That's why I'm pro filters. I just don't expect what I'm engaging with to not be altered in some way. And so when I see an unaltered image, even then I'm like, okay, it's gone through some sort of.
I quickly want to make a point on the fact that you said you feel quite safe on Instagram. I find that really interesting, especially as a queer, black man. I feel like social media platforms aren't protecting the people who are putting content out on them. So, for example, you put something out, you feel good. 25 trolls in your comment section telling you that you're fat and stop eating this and stop doing that, and I feel like it can be a way to even faster to absorb negativity and society's idea of what beauty standards are. And because we have so much access to each other now because of social media, I feel like if you don't have this healthy relationship with it, if you can't put your phone down, and if if you're internalizing a million people's opinion of you, of course you're gonna.
And I don't mean to say that it's not a problem.
Spiral. Yeah.
But rather, and obviously, how I feel on Instagram is a reflection of my positionality, right? Like how I show up in the world, or how the world perceives me, and so I'm totally aware of that. And I don't mean to say that it's not a problem. I think it is a problem. I'm just not sure that the problem is social media per se. I think the problem is how we think we're supposed to engage with this platform. There was this wonderful article I shared on Twitter the other day from a queer black feminist theorist who kind of theorizes around Afro-presentism. So it's not the kind of escapist Afrofuturism, we're going to escape to a different planet and start a whole new colony and be black. But how do we as black people show up in the world as we are now, pursuing joy and thriving and not just survival? And so she was talking about like digital citizenship, and that so much of what we need at the minute as black people is that we kind of commit to showing up online, kind of ready to make space and care for each other, which is not how the internet is designed to function per se, right? That there's a certain individual responsibility that we each have, not only on our own education, but how we then decide to go out into the digital spaces and interact with the world around us. So I think it's complex. Final point, I just want to say that millennials should be given more credit, because we have been the internet's guinea pigs, right? Like, we're the first generation to really confront the advent of the internet in a really meaningful way, right? And it's kind of like all-encompassing, every aspect of your life is moderated, done online, and social media, right? This crazy onslaught of an entirely new way of existing in the world. And so as we figure this out, we need support, not only from each other, but like societal support, because we need to be given credit and space for trying to figure this shit out, for being the ones who crash test dummies for the internet.
And also we had to deal with that bloop, 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 waiting for it to connect thing. So,
Traumatized.
and that.
If I see AOL, it's on site. It's like,
any questions or comments, guys, raise your hands and we'll get a mic to you. We've got a couple of radios now, so I'm going to move forward. Let's get a question to the gentleman. Start with yourself. Let me come to the mic.
Oh yeah.
If you could project, because that's for the streamers, so it's on, but you can't hear it.
It's on? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
So thanks for the discussion. As you've been speaking, I've sort of noticed a couple of things. Clearly, the subject of beauty is quite complex. On one hand, you've alluded to the multidimensionality of beauty. You've also hinted at subjectivity, but then at the same time mentioned arbiters and sort of standards. So it's, on one hand, it's subjective, but also you seem to suggest it's objective. Can it be both at the same time?
well, it is, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But whether or not it can, it's not a theoretical question necessarily, right? It is. Like, we are living sentient human beings reckoning with someone trying to impose, very effectively, what beauty is supposed to be in this white, Western, cis-hetero patriarchal world, and our lived experience as subjective, subjects, trying to make meaning of the world around us, including beauty for ourselves. I don't think it has to be one or the other. It's both and.
So it's just a follow-up, if you don't mind. So if we were to abstract away from our society, maybe go to an African society, do we think we'll be observing the same things? As in, is there a cultural element to beauty, which would then imply it's objective rather than subjective?
I was actually on a Zoom call with someone, a group of content creators with a brand, and we were discussing racism, and she was from, I'm going to butcher this, but I think it was Kenya or Ghana, one of those two places, and she was like, yeah, I can't relate, we don't have racism here. And my mind was blown. I was like, get me some flight tickets. But at the same time, it's like, I'm, like, both my parents were born in Jamaica, I was born here, so this is my country. But why should I have to leave to feel safe, and why should I have to leave to feel beautiful, and why should I have to, we done been through it. I can do what I want at this point, yeah, that's my answer to that.
I would add to that, and I say that, you know, I went to Ghana a few years ago, and yes, you know, I would say that perhaps racism as a concept doesn't exist, but we still feel the effects of colonialism in the sense of that we've got colorism, you know, all the impositions on, you know, how we should wear our hair, you know, whether or not we choose to lighten our skin, you know, the kind of makeup we wear, how we apply makeup. I feel as though, as a society, we still have internalized, you know, the remnants of colonialism, whether or not it's direct racism within our society. We still feel that.
Yeah, and I think it is totally cultural, right? And I mean, I can't speak to any of the countries on the African continent because my family's Black American, but I do know from reading, at the very least, and through conversations, that the tentacles of white supremacy have reached pretty far, right? There's not many places that haven't been scarred or are being wounded at present by what white supremacy demands from all of us. And so that's my, I think many cultures have been impacted by it.
The gentleman in the middle row.
Am I the gentleman?
The gentleman.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
I'm going to try not to be that guy that takes 17 minutes to ask the question.
I'll cut you off.
Okay, so when we talk about redefining beauty, I think it redefines itself. If we go as far back as the Mona Lisa being pushed in front of us, like, that's beautiful. And I've always looked at that picture and been like, where is that beautiful? How is that beautiful? But my question is essentially, has it kind of does it sort of redefine itself? So you've got the Mona Lisa, then you've got things like makeup. Now, Jordan, you also mentioned filters. Is that sort of the new way that beauty is redefining itself? So essentially what I'm asking you guys is, do you think beauty sort of redefines itself rather than the expectations that's been put upon us? I'm not saying it's not there, but I also believe it sort of redefines itself in terms of makeup and paintings. Back in the day it was painting, they didn't have social media.
You're asking, does it kind of come around in different iterations?
In different generations.
What do you think, guys?
I think that's not necessarily beauty per se, but like style. You know, like I studied fashion, and you know, we know that every 20 years everything comes back, right? Like there are no really new ideas, as it were. And so that's kind of, and fashion is beautiful, right? But there are arbiters of what's beautiful in fashion, right? Issey Miyake, when he first started, you know, out there, right? But now Zara is doing Issey Miyake plissé pants, right? Like, I think that there are many ways that beauty shows up and is interpreted by a generation, is perhaps more like the generations reprioritize, I think, what is beautiful. And this redefinition of beauty, I think, happens on an individual level and at a community level as well. Like, I know that, to my point earlier about seeing some of my queer friends kind of evolve in who they are and how they express themselves. Like, that's being done among a community and at an individual level, and that's altering how we're all seeing and understanding what beautiful is.
We'll come to you in a second. Can we get a mic to Lucy at the front here? But just before we get to your question, I want to talk about Black women and dark-skinned Black women, and how, I mean, I purposely now follow certain Instagram pages where I see positivity, I see joy, and I see Black people being portrayed in a way that I think is positive to me anyway, and beautiful to me. And that also includes looking at people that look like me. I'm a dark-skinned man, and I often hear from Black women friends of mine who are dark-skinned about the difficulties they go through trying to get employment, trying to date, trying to just be seen as beautiful. And I want to start with yourself, because you made a film recently about 12 Ghanaian women, and I watched one of them who was a beautiful dark-skinned Ghanaian woman. How conscious of what you were doing in terms of portraying dark-skinned women in their beauty, in my opinion, was it for you in making those series of films? Yeah,
it was a very conscious decision to make sure that the people that I represented in the films scanned a large and diverse group. I think black skin, you know, dark black skin in particular, it's always been kind of stigmatized. You know, there's always been this kind of like, you know, you'd be more attractive if you were, you know, if you had lighter skin. It's again what I was saying about adopting these kind of colonialist kind of values that have been imposed on us. I think it's very easy to internalize those thoughts and those feelings as Black people. And yeah, so it was a very deliberate decision to try and make sure that I included kind of black women with a range of skin tones in that project in particular.
And just talk me through some of the pressures that black women, in particular in media, face in trying to be their authentic self. Because I've got, I think of 3, I won't name their names because it's not fair. I can think of 3 friends of mine who work on television, who are dark-skinned women, who when I see them on television often wear makeup that significantly lightens their skin. And that makes me a bit sad, but I'm not them, so I don't think it's fair for me to say, why are you doing that, it's wrong. Talk us through some of the difficulties and pressures of being a black woman in the media and having to compromise, if you like, for want of a better phrase, and able to get screen time, but not completely give up who you really are and how you really look.
It's, you know, it's hard because I think, you know, working in the media, it's predominantly white dominated industry still, and you know, you have to find your place, you have to find a version of yourself where you're still being true to yourself, but also there's this duality. You also have to think outside of yourself, how you're perceived, you know, in the tone of voice that you use, you know, in the way that you walk into a room, you know, you raise your voice and you're immediately the angry black woman, and there's that pressure to kind of be palatable in a way to, you know, to a wider audience. And I think, you know, a lot of black women feel that pressure, you know, to conform or to kind of fit, you know, to fit in, and it's tricky, you know, but I honestly do feel as though like it's changing, and what we accept, you know, when we switch on to, you know, television, or you know, when we watch things, I think what we're seeing as, you know, beautiful is sorry, I lost my train of thought again.
No,
That's me.
You were just talking about
I was going and I just lost my train of thought. Yeah, it was there and then it went. Yeah, it's difficult. There's no straight answer to that. It's a constant battle, if I'm honest.
Sure.
It's not something that I can say, you know, there's one way of resolving this. It's a change that is in the making, and something that we have to fight against on a daily.
Shahira, yourself as a black woman, what difficulties have you faced in trying to get content out there, work with certain commercial partners maybe, and how problematic is your skin tone being, if at all, in trying to get through?
Well, first of all, I'm glad you've said as a black woman, because I definitely thought I was a dark-skinned black woman until I moved to London and had dark-skinned black female friends say, you ain't dark-skinned. When you grow up around white people, when you predominantly grow up around white people, you're just black. I don't know if anyone else has had this experience.
Yeah.
The people around me were white. I didn't think there was colorism. I didn't think there were shades of black. If you were black, you were black. And then I moved to London and had more diversity within blackness. And we were having a conversation, me and 3 of my female friends who are all dark-skinned black women. And I was like, yeah. And they were like, you know you ain't dark-skinned, right? I was like, am I not? Like I genuinely had no idea, but I just wanted to mention that. But yeah, there are so many barriers as a black person on social media. Within my job, so I'm a full-time freelance content creator, right? And I'm a black woman. And I see my white peers just excelling for doing the absolute least. And I'm like, why am I sweating myself to sleep thinking about the next paid job when these people are like doing a reel, putting their socks on and getting $500,000, and I'm like, what? I before I became a full-time freelancer, I worked within social media. So I was a junior brand manager for a makeup company. So I've seen what it's like on the other side, and I had to make a conscious decision in that role. Like, I'm only putting black and brown people forward because everyone else is riding for whiteness within this industry. And seeing like the pay gap for myself, experiencing it for myself, I'm so like foot down now when it comes to working with brands. Black History Month, my rates triple. I'm like, if you want that representation, and I look at your feed and it's white, ooh, it's Black History Month, brown, tea shade, like I'm just like, my rates are tripled. Like you just have to be, you kind of have to navigate that space with almost like a smartness about how the brand that you're working with, or the brands who aren't working with you, like if I see a brand that doesn't work with black and brown people, why am I putting it on my face and being like tag? I'm not selling that to other black people because I'm not trying to help a brand that doesn't see us. But if I see a brand that is like ride or die, but you also have to be careful, because I worked for this beauty company who were like projecting one voice, but internally I was the only black person. You know, so basically, and because they knew I could do content, they'd use my face to diversify their feed. And like people, I talk to them about this beauty company now, and they're like, what? But the feed is so I'm like, yeah, but they're paying that person £50 and they're paying that white person £200,000. And like, it's just, it's crazy. Like if people knew what their faves were doing behind the scene, unfollow City, unfollow.
I'd love to see anybody in the audience has got an experience of being black and dark skinned in regards to being at work or just being in wider society, and how it's kind of played out. But we had a question at the front here. Can we get a mic, please? Thank you.
Good evening, panel. Question to you. We've been in a time of pandemic and we have had to bring our personal selves into a public space. And within this, let's talk about the head tie or the bonnet. And for context, this is what black women will use for protective hairstyling. The Oscar winner Monique said that for her opinion, it should be within a private space rather than within a public space. So panel, please let me know your thoughts. Head ties, bonnets, public or private, and why?
We had this conversation outside. I think we need to stop policing black people in general. If someone wants to relax their hair, we need to be on their side as black people. If someone wants to shave their hair off, we need to be on their side as black people. Why are we constantly policing black people? And when it comes from within the black community, to me, that is the wildest, maddest move, because you then open a door for those white people who are waiting for someone black to address it, to be like, yeah, I think that too. Then suddenly the room is filled with white people telling us that we can't wear bonnets in public. And it's like, why'd you do that, sis? You know, that's my opinion on that. That's dead on that.
I would agree with that. 100%.
Yeah.
I've got nothing to add. 100%.
Respectability politics is not going to save us. That should be clear by now. This isn't a critique of Auntie Monique. I just want to point out that I believe she gave that video, published that video of herself in a bathrobe saying that bonnets were private on social media. So what's the truth, you know? But yeah, I'm for, however black women want to show up in the world, I'm for it.
It's black people in general, yeah.
I feel like for so long we just haven't been allowed to just be, to exist. And I think whichever way you want to present yourself to the world that you're comfortable with, you know, if you're fine with that, why wouldn't the rest of the world be?
Josh, as a man, do you feel a pressure to look a certain way?
No.
No? Mm-mm. Have you ever felt a pressure? And I ask.
I don't think so.
I ask because I see a lot more men changing parts of their body because they're trying to, again, conform into what the modern day man should look like.
Or aspire. Yeah.
Or aspire to. You're not allowed to have any semblance of a belly anymore. You've got to have a particular type of beard. You've got to...
You're talking about the Shia video, right? As a man, why doesn't your beard connect?
I'm not. But there's a lot... I hear you. But there's easy. But there's definitely a lot of men I know who are feeling a bigger pressure now to look a particular way. This is something that's never ever affected or impacted how you show up physically.
Oh, hugely. Like I'm being facetious. So I think the first point to make, I think, is I think I don't know that we are impacted more recently. I think that recently the language and the spaces have changed for men to be able to actually acknowledge it. Right? I don't know that, rather, what I do know is that masculinity is a horrible imposition on those born as male, right? Like, it's impossible, right? Even the most masculine men on earth don't think they're masculine enough. Like, it is this ever-changing goalpost that's so hard to reach. As a gay black man, I use gay and queer interchangeably, but in different situations. As a gay black man, I have contended with body image issues for as long as I can remember. I had problematic eating patterns as early as 16, a contentious relationship with the gym, which is now 20 years in the making. Like, it's a constant process of how I look and how I show up in the world, how I look because that's how I want to show up in the world, or is it because I know that my value to society is my sexual serviceability, right? And I don't know the answer. Some days it's like, this is how I feel as Josh Rivers, and other days it's like, I am a sex object robot. And I don't know that I don't know any other way to be. But I think that's my honest reckoning with what it means to be a gay man of a certain age in the 21st century.
The two ladies in the panel, is there a difference in how you're seeing men alter how they look? Or as Josh says, is it just we have different language now to kind of, and a different space for those men to show up how they want to show up?
I think it's a chain reaction. I think basically what's happened is we now have more access to each other, and the same pressure that has always been applied to women is now being applied to men, and we're kind of watching that in real time. So there's always been, like, I guess this gentleman thing going on, like, in society, like, we're going back to whenever, like, be a gentleman, like, open doors for her. But for women, it's always been like, wear that red lipstick, make sure no curls are out of place, like, wear that, cinch this. Now we have more access to celebrity culture, we have more access to what other men are doing. This is me talking from my inner man, clearly. Yeah, no, I think that men just have more access to each other through media, social media, and there's a pressure because now men can actively see, not that they're defining their beauty standards around women, but they can actively see what women are socially, like, saying they're attracted to. Does that am I making sense? You're like, for example, who do I use as an example? I don't know, like, I'm going to do a female example, but like Kim Kardashian, we've seen the effect that, like, we don't all love them, but we've seen the effect that the Kardashians have had, and we can see that there was a point where it was like, that was the standard of beauty online, on social media, you know, like this fake blackness that she was trying to pull off. I'm just saying it with my chest. But I'm trying to make sense here, but like the male equivalent of that, like, men can see what other men are doing, men can see what women are considering attractive, and say, I don't know how to end that sentence, but
is that anything new?
Yeah, because I don't know. Sorry, I don't know that the male standard has changed per se.
I can't speak on it.
I don't know that it has. Just to illustrate this kind of language space-making point, like, I don't know how many people know this, but the kind of gym buff, prototypical gay body that we're used to seeing, and like, even if you're not au fait with gay culture, you know what I'm talking about, right? That emerged in response to the AIDS crisis, right? Men were kind of, gay men, so they wouldn't be seen as sick, were like taking steroids and working out and trying to reach this kind of Greco-Roman ideal. We're almost 50 years on from that AIDS crisis. We should say the AIDS crisis is ongoing in Black communities. And we still see that is the kind of gold standard body type, not just for gay men, but for men, right? Like, it just hasn't changed. It's like been really consistent. And it's been that since at least the 50s, right? And so I do think that it's a space-making kind of language thing, that people they are seeing each other more. And there are more spaces for them to say, actually, do you think this is crazy? Like, have you been able to achieve that? And more guys kind of breaking publicly and saying, this is how hard it is, which I think gives other men permission to say, I'm struggling. Which is why I think it's important as a gay man to say, I struggle with body image issues. Like, I hate the gym and I love it. And sometimes I count my calories, and I'm doing an episode that's coming out on Busy Being Black in the next couple of weeks with Deshaun Harrison, who's a Black fat trans theorist and activist and organizer. And they've written a book called Belly of the Beast, which is tackling anti-fatness and as anti-blackness. And part of that theorizing and that organizing work is around diet culture. And we had this conversation, and I said, I think part of this is that we have this kind of very anti-fat, fat-phobic approach to the world, right? That sees us policing other people's bodies. And I said to Deshaun, but I'm also policing myself, right? And I don't know if we talk about that I'm counting calories, that I'm thinking about, you know, maintaining a certain weight, and what impact that has on my ability to connect with other men, trans men, people. And so this kind of indoctrination that we all have, I think it extends far back and far across. I don't know any of us that
I also feel like with fat phobia, it runs so deep that people who, like, there's no, I'm so rubbish at articulating myself right. I think I'm dehydrated.
You're doing really well.
Thank you. I feel like there's this unachievable standard of beauty is when it comes to body image and body weight. and no one is there. So I feel like when I had this conversation with someone recently, when you're closer to what you think the ideal standard of beauty is, it consumes you more, I feel. I know that I'm never going to be skinny. I don't want to be, but I know I'm never going to be. So I've let go of it. I've let go of that aspirational like mentality from when I was a kid, where it's like, I just don't want to eat so I can be Kate Moss. I'm never going to be Kate Moss. So I need to be my own version of me that is just as powerful as what she did for whoever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and I just feel like if I was like, I'm so close to being that version of who I thought I wanted to be, like, I feel like I would hold on to that more and have even worse habits. I don't know, that's like a personal thing.
I have a
but,
question for you three and the audience. So we're talking about kind of entrenched and encoded beauty standards in white Western societies, but we all have Black beauty standards. So what's the difference? So is there a, when you think of who you consider to be Black beauty icons, does that also feel aspirational / unattainable? Does that also feel, do we have a different approach to, or an understanding of what Black beauty means and is for us?
I feel like we have to differentiate between what we personally feel as Black beauty and the standard of Black beauty that has
Capital
been
B,
imposed
capital B.
on us,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of, loose cold texture, pale skin,
Naomi Campbell.
Exactly,
Yeah.
Naomi Campbell with a weave.
Oh,
or
10
just
D-Way,
like-
I'm sorry, I'm the chosen one.
I feel as though
My mama looks like
differentiate. You have to differentiate between those two, and I think that can be really hard as a
Yeah.
Black person. Do I think Lupita Nyong'o is stunning because she is stunning, which she is,
Yeah.
or is it, or do I think she's stunning because I've been told to
Hollywood
think
have
that,
said,
Hollywood
this
has
is
said
what
this
Black
is
women
really
look like.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes it's really confusing. I think as a Black person, you have to work that out for yourself.
Yeah.
It's not always straightforward.
That question made sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Does everyone agree with that? Does anybody disagree with that? Oh, the back there. Just, can you get a mic to the gentleman at the back, please?
While we do that, I also think Black beauty, for example,
cool.
Lady Phil is incredible, like an icon, like someone that I think is just legendary. Like when she turned on the NBA, I was like, love you. But I think it's more of an appreciation when I look at someone Black who I think is like up there. It's not I'm trying to be you. It's like
Yeah.
That's how
I
I feel.
appreciate your visibility.
Like
and you
Tyson
are,
Beckford.
Yes.
Like I could fill my face to the brim, and I'm not going to be
water.
that angular, right? Like, but I don't resent Tyson Beckford, right? Like I exalt him. I don't resent Naomi Campbell. I exalt her. Lupita Nyong'o. Black beauty
Agreed.
is to be exalted. That I feel a contentious relationship with white beauty standards and beauty icons.
Let's get a comment from the back there.
So this is just my humble opinion, but for me, I don't think there is a difference, because by virtue of the fact that you are trying to define any form of beauty, you then impose parameters, right? That's the basic axiom, the starting point. And if you do that, then you automatically tell someone else, or you imply that someone else isn't as beautiful, right? So the second you say this is beautiful, it means that is not as beautiful. And there's a sliding scale on that. But it's just like, it doesn't matter where the source is coming from that's telling you what beauty is. It then leaves a larger degree of people out which do not conform to that. I think that's the real issue, is that we spend so much time in society trying to define or point out what beauty is, rather than just celebrating people for who they are. And so I think, personally, we should move away from saying, okay, we've got pressure from this source, or we have pressure from that source, and we think that this is okay. And it's just like, why don't we just spend more time celebrating each other? Why don't we just spend more time saying, okay, that's excellence, and this is excellence, and this is excellence, and do you know what, like, we are all just great being who we are. Why don't we spend more time on social media just saying, okay, yeah, we can all be great, rather than having to pinpoint and then cause a ricochet of different personal issues, whether that's like self-harm or whether it's anxiety or it's like food disorders. It's like, let's move away from these parameters. There are like bigger things, more important things for us to focus on, right? It's like, why don't we spend more time building each other up rather than like just idolizing certain parameters? That's just me. I guess the fundamental point is it possible to define beauty in any form from any source without causing a ricochet of issues on other people?
It is for yourself. I think I'm beautiful, but there's so much outside noise that tells me I'm not, but I think I'm beautiful, and that allows me to project beauty and to welcome it into my life as well. Like, that we have to be honest, there are some people outside who aren't, there are some people who aren't beautiful people. They're not nice people. And I said this, like, I don't think beauty can be defined as a physical thing. I said this right at the beginning, but not everyone is a beautiful person. Some people are haters, you know? But
I'm much nicer to other people than I am to myself when it comes to how they show up in the world.
Yeah.
But that's
Like,
something you've got to work on.
Yeah,
It's a journey. You've got to work on it.
Yeah. But yeah, I think this link, can I just make a point? I think you asked a question earlier, I think those are linked, right? Is that kind of what you were getting at? That there's a subjective experience of what beautiful is, as in what I consider beautiful, and there versus the kind of like society trying to impose what is objectively beautiful. Were you talking about that tension? Yeah, my bad. I think I misunderstood that.
If you want a question, put your hands up so we can see them, and we'll get to you as soon as possible.
Hi, Matthew here. So
it's not Trisha. You don't have to say your name.
I just thought.
Why not? Yeah.
I'm
So-
Hi,
Gotta be polite. Manners gets you quite far. Hello all. So I was just thinking, and I closed my eyes and thought, we've described physically what we see, and it got me thinking about a work colleague whose son is blind. So all of what we said is what we physically see, and she gave she was talking about how we find it difficult to make friends, etc., and then she came back in and said, someone at school did something really nice for her son, and he said, that's so beautiful. So isn't beautiful just a doing word that you don't physically have to see? It's what people do, not what you physically see. So I think we almost need to defining things are very difficult, because I think, as Dean said, sometimes you can push yourself on other people, but I think sometimes we need to close our eyes and realise that it's what people do for us and how we show up and the things we do as a doing word which makes things beautiful and people beautiful, because not everybody can see. So it was just more of a comment rather than a question to the panel.
Thank you. Can we get the
appreciate
mic
that
to
prompt.
the lady? Okay.
I appreciate that prompt, Matthew. Yeah.
I also just want to say I said that. I've done been saying that since the beginning.
But also, it's all of the above, right? Like, we have to
Yeah.
think about beauty in more complicated ways, in more beautiful ways, right?
More inclusive ways.
I'm obsessed with white lilies. Like, I think that they're so bold to be so white in a world that's so dirty. But that's beautiful, right? And in many ways, it does a beautiful thing. It smells beautiful. It looks beautiful. It feels beautiful if you close your eyes.
So I'm going to do something really unfair. One of my researcher for Blakademik here is in the room, and this is really unfair because it's really unprompted, but she's blind, and I would love, off the back of what you just said, Matthew, to get Abby's perspective on what beauty is to her. So I'm putting you on the spot here, Abby. I'm really sorry, but you know I was going to do it at some point. We'll get a mic to you. One sec.
Hello. So I think in terms of the community, I have a similar experience to, what was your name? Shahira. In terms of, I was brought up in care and being both black and disabled, and I was brought up by white people, and I was born in Jamaica, but I didn't have people that around me that understood my cultural identity, so I really felt separated from that side, and so I really dissociated from my blackness, and I struggled to see myself in terms of in my house, but then also in terms of the media as well. So I was like, where am I? Like, and you do project and you do internalize, because you're like, well, where am I? Everyone's telling you, you know, all the boys are at school are, you know, liking all the lighter skinned girls or the blonde girls with the pigtails or whatever. And, you know, you still like you're wrong, but there's nothing that you can kind of do about it. And I think that was quite weird in terms of being a part of Blakademiks, because I felt like it was like a crash course in blackness in a weird way. Yeah, we did, because I was like, oh, I've never heard of this, like in terms of all of the different cultures. So I feel like being a part of Blakademiks did help me to celebrate my black identity and the different things, because I wasn't comfortable with my blackness. And when I was really young, when I was first adopted, I remember my mum saying that I told her that I wanted to be white. Do you know what I mean? Because of what the world told me was beautiful, and I didn't reflect that. And so I think it's really important that we also add the disability and black conversation, because I've often been told that we have to separate them, but obviously I can't because I'm both. So I think it's really important that they add the complexities and the nuance in terms of blackness, and we get more comfortable with disability in our community, because I think there is a stigma within our community, and I think it's really important that we have that conversation and we celebrate our black disabled, you know, sisters, brothers, whatever, like, do you know what I mean? And show that that's also okay, because disability, in terms of the diversity conversation, disability is often left out of the conversation, and that often makes you feel like even in your community, you're not accepted, sort of thing. So yeah, that's kind of what I think about it.
In 2 minutes, I'm going to cut you off there.
Sorry, oh my God.
I know I put it on you, but you're not special, yeah? So just, let's wrap it up. Can we get the mic to the lady in the front back, please? Thank you, Abby.
Thank you for that. I also quickly want to add, like, I just, as a non-visual person or as a blind person, I just want everyone to be conscious of what you just said, in that white supremacy runs so deep that even somebody who cannot see their own skin colour would say, as a child, I want to be white. I hope that's not me overstepping the line or anything, but that's how deep it runs, and like we need to think about things like that.
Cool.
But, yeah.
Lady at the front.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Good evening. Sorry, that's okay. Fine. I know we're talking about white supremacy and how society sees us and what have you, but I personally feel that it starts at home. And, you know, I was always told by my parents, as a dark-skinned black woman, you're beautiful. Yeah. So when I went out, when I went to primary school, I was the only black girl in my school. And no matter what somebody said to me, when I went home, my mum would say to me, you're beautiful. So that's what I believed, you know. So I think part of, you know, accepting yourself is about your environment, the environment that you come up in.
Exactly, and what you're taught.
Yeah, and what we're taught.
Because as a dark-skinned woman as well, I rarely experienced any discrimination. I think it was all brought down to how my family, how we were brought up.
Yeah.
My family educated me. My parents told me about the discrimination. They told us, but it was in a sense celebrating our blackness, celebrating the history, educating us, and saying that we are beautiful. And as a result, when you have that mindset, when you walk into a world, you don't have that baggage, I will say, on your shoulders. And I think being of a generation where we grew up with very inspirational role models in the 1990s, we had Naomi Campbell, we had Imam, we had Janet Jackson, we had Whitney Houston, we had all these beautiful dark-skinned, brown-skinned women that the rest of the world emulated and wanted to aspire to. We had Diana Ross, we had Aretha Franklin. What do our daughters, what do my nieces, what do my nephews have as inspiration now? Especially my young children who I'm educating now, they don't have those role models. They don't have anything at the moment. So when we say about, I think this generation, we actually broke glass ceilings, a lot of glass ceilings, because we had very inspirational figures, and not just in the media, it's also politically as well. you know, there was always the first black MPs. You know, we had superstars. We had Florence Griffith Joyner as well. So we also saw how the beauty standard changed as well. We saw people started to inject their lips when 20 years ago people were commenting on how big our lips were. People were saying how big our bums were, and then we started seeing white women injecting their lips, injecting their bums, shortening their noses, browning our skins. You know, we realise now that this is our beauty, is something that white society wants to emulate. You know, and when you have that mindset, you know you can go into society and hold your head up high. So I've never had those experiences, in all honesty. I agree with you, Jack. I have not had those experiences where I've wanted to be white. I've wanted to lighten my skin. I darken my skin when I go back home. It's something that I celebrate, and I think it is to do with how you're brought up. Definitely.
You two want to come in. Go on.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I think I 100% agree with you. I feel the difficulties that a lot of people have today is that you have white women emulating black culture, but still, you know, we're told that we're not wanted. You know, we want everything about you. We want your lips. We want, you know, your bum on, but exactly. And I think, especially in the media, you know, I'm finding, you know, even as a filmmaker, you know, the amount of time, you know, my industry is talking about how we need to change. We need to get more black people on camera and behind camera. If you look at the statistics about, you know, the number of black directors, the number of black female directors, especially in the UK and in America, you know, it's shocking. Still, you know, I feel that little has changed in that regard.
Josh, want to briefly add to that?
Well, I just wanted to add consume. It's not just emulate. There's an incredible book by Vincent Woodard called The Delectable Negro, and he theorizes about the cannibalistic nature of whiteness. Like, it's not just enough to emulate, you also have to consume metaphorically and literally.
I'm going to get to the final question in a second, but I want to ask all three of you how people can adopt a more healthier mindset of what beauty is, if indeed you think there is a thing called beauty, because some people have a very, I think, warped idea placed on what beauty is. But before, a couple more questions from the audience before we get to this lady in the front.
Just going on what you were saying, this whole conversation is really personal to me because, can you hear me? Okay. Very personal to me because I've been working around beauty for such a long time. I came from the fashion industry. I'm now an artist, and my whole work is about black beauty. But yes, you can tell your children, and how you're brought up, you can be told that you are beautiful, give you the confidence. But I think we underestimate as adults how influential that noise is out there. My 21-year-old daughter, who has grown up all her life being told, you are gorgeous, you're gorgeous, is fighting issues now with her identity, with her beauty, because she doesn't feel she fits in. So no matter what anyone tells her, how much she's grown up all her life being told she is beautiful, because social media is so powerful. And, you know, there's so many questions I want to ask, as in, what is the identity of black beauty? What is it? I think it's very close to what white beauty is, what the media tells us. No matter how much we look at it, it is very, very much still in line with that. What social media tells you beautiful is, what the magazines tell you beautiful is what these young kids are striving for. You know, the rate of suicide within young people has increased over the last decade because of that. And I think as adults, we have to take some of that responsibility ourselves, because as much as you feel you're confident, what you're putting out there is still affecting people. As black people, we have to take that responsibility ourselves, because I'm an artist, and my recent collection is called Colorism, and I spoke to so many young people about colorism. Where is this still coming from? Because I grew up with it, not knowing it was colorism, being told that, you know, I was beautiful because I was light-skinned. My sister, who looks exactly like me but darker, was always told how black she was, how black she said she grew up with that. But I think I didn't realize this was still going on today. And young boys are still talking to black girls in such a derogatory way about their skin tone that they would rather have, and this is thing they're putting on social media publicly without any hesitation to say that they would rather be with a light-skinned girl than a dark-skinned girl. They would rather have a baby with a light-skinned girl than a dark-skinned girl. So I think we still have to, as adults of this generation, is look at ourselves. What are we doing? Are we not educating our young people enough? Are we not putting out the right message enough to change it? So it's like, what I want to ask the panel is, how do we change the narrative? How do we change the way young people see themselves going forward?
Closing question. You want to kick off first?
Well, I feel like this is kind of my forte, seeing as I'm an influencer. Content. Who wants to go first? I think when it comes to specifically consuming social media, I think we need to remind, especially young black folk, that they can choose what they see. We forget there's an unfollow button. It's the same button that you press to follow. And I think maybe, I don't know what it's like to have a kid and to monitor them using social media, so I can't comment on that, but maybe checking in with younger people on what they are consuming. What have you seen recently that's, inspired you, or what made you want to buy that dress, or just, I guess, checking in and just making sure they're consuming the right kind of thing. And if you think, you can't control what someone consumes all the time, but you're an artist, for example, and you've just done this amazing project on colorism, how many young people have you been to and just been like, oh, check this out? Or have you asked your daughter to share it with her friends? Or, I think we need to just not try and force young black people into this is what we think is beautiful and this is what the world will tell you is beautiful, but just give young black people the option and the understanding that they can choose what they consume. They don't have to look at things that make them feel like shit, or they have. Am I allowed to swear?
You just did, but it's fine.
I didn't. What? I didn't swear. I'm a lady. But yeah, I think just gentle nudges and making sure we let them know that there are, not to plug myself, but to plug myself, there are people like me online who are also saying, I'm fat, I'm black, I'm a woman, and I love myself, and I'm beautiful, and no matter what you look like, you can learn to love yourself or undo these weird ideals that people have put in place to make you hate yourself, tummy me tea. Are you joking? Oh gosh, anyway, I hope I answered that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think, with the rise of social media, in some instances, not all, it has replaced kind of conversation. You can like someone's photo rather than actually asking them how they are actually doing, how they're feeling with what's going on in the world, how they're feeling with themselves. I think that we need to reclaim that in a sense. I feel like social media has taken over our lives in such a great way that we often don't actually talk to each other about what we're consuming, how it's making us feel, and I think that's key. It's not, it's not a coincidence that suicide rates among Gen Z are the highest that they've ever been, higher than any generation. I think it's because the amount of social media that's just consumed, and the lack of conversation. I think it is changing, but I think we just have to have really honest conversations about our mental health and how social media has kind of impacted our mental health. And I think that more and more celebrities and high-profile people are doing that, but I think we just have to make sure that this is a constant conversation that needs to be had with young people and with everyone, really. Yeah.
And to conclude, Josh, what are your thoughts on what people can do?
My immediate response to that was, I have no idea. As someone who's trying to figure it out still, I feel like a fraud giving advice. And so I won't. What I will say is what's helped me challenge notions of beauty, where I find ones that I don't think fit or are natural or make sense. Natural is such a contentious word. Where I think they're kind of oppressive. I feel very lucky to have recently been surrounded by people who light up when they see me, and who when I feel like I'm expressing myself at my most authentic, I hate that word too, it's so subjective, they see me, I feel seen, right? And they respond really positively to that, and that makes me feel beautiful, completely, right? Someone recognizes my intellect, my passion for poetry, my weird facts. Speaking of which, sorry, I have to do this. Did you know that humans have a really discrete bandwidth of hearing between 2.5 and 5.5 kilohertz? Like it's super discrete. Like we can hear something very specific 2 miles away. The only thing in nature that matches that discrete bandwidth of hearing is birdsong. Why did humans evolve to be able to hear birdsong from miles away? Because birdsong indicates habitats prosperous to humans. So when the pandemic hit and everyone was like, the bird song, like we could hear it and it was like our bodies were literally responding to our environment changing around us in a really positive way.
That's fascinating.
So see, I light up. I'm like, oh my God, I love that. And so when people respond to that, I feel like people see me as my full self. And that makes me feel beautiful. So I'm trying to do that for my young nephew and my young niece. How do I help them feel, at least when they're with me, that they are the world, that not everything they do is good, but that who they are expressing themselves at their young ages are perfect. I won't always be able to protect them, but I can do my level best.
I hope that helps. Those suggestions and answers.
Yes.
We tried.
No, it's like so hard. It's one of those open-ended questions. It's really, really hard to find.
I'll just conclude with kind of to build on your point about surrounding yourself with people that look like you, but also
not
make
just
you feel,
look,
but make you feel in a way that empowers you. So as you said, there was a thing on Twitter I saw, Instagram, was a video of an old Oscar speech from a director won an Oscar, and he said one of the key things to life is to surround yourself with people, as you said, who light up when they see you. They're the people you want to be around. The people that are, when they see you, they buzz, they bounce. And that is a reflection of inner beauty, I guess, because you're with people that they appreciate and respect and love you, and they want to be around you.
Yeah, and people who'll be honest, because sometimes I look crazy, and you should say something. No, I do not look beautiful. I have a booger in my nose. Like, it's, like it's okay to be honest. Yeah.
Indeed, it is. I hope that helps everybody else. Indeed, I'm going to make some love, please, for Josh, Meena, and Shahira, please. We are Blakademik. I mentioned we're on all the socials. Please follow us on our social platforms, on our YouTube channel as well. Divulge even into all of our fantastic content. You will love it, I promise you. And get home safe, everyone. Thank you very much. I don't know for sure, but I think you can hang around a little bit for some drinks and some networking, some chit chat. So, sorry? Oh yeah, and the stream people as well. Big up. Thank you very much. Sorry. Thank you very much. Sorry, Francis. Sorry. Thank you. Get home safe, everyone. Thank you.